Most people react with, that's not what they want. They don't want, they're just trying to protect women. And no, there is an industry behind this.
Let's talk about that. Let's go there. So what is the real why? What do you think is fueling all
It's
that? I'm Sam Castor. We're here with Melissa Clement, who is an icon in protecting life. Society is defined by how it treats the defenseless.
It really is.
So we're delighted to have you here because you are a champion of the defenseless.
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here.
Oh, great. Thank you. So tell me your story. How did you get involved with this? And I know that we can talk about question 6, which is coming up here in Nevada. It's a big constitutional question. I don't even think it's about pro-life, pro-choice. I think it's just about protecting women and children.
Yes.
And we can get into that. But tell me, how did you end up becoming an advocate for the defenseless?
Well, I think I always really cared about the person on the playground when I was little that would get bullied. So I think it probably is something in my personality. But I wasn't always pro-life.
Mm.
I was one of those feminist women, and I thought women need to have choices, and
Well, they do.
absolutely. Well, when I got pregnant with my first baby, suddenly it was very obvious that this was just not a clump of tissue. I mean, when life happens, I mean, it changes everything. I can remember I was probably just 3 or 4 days pregnant, and I knew there was something different. The timing was really interesting, though, because it was right during the discussion of partial birth abortion on a federal level. And it was kind of like I was a split personality for a little bit there, because I had always been, a woman has to have this right, and it is just an issue. But I was sitting in the living room with my mom. I was about 5.5 months pregnant. The news was on, and Rick Santorum was showing those big illustrations of partial birth abortion. Absolutely grotesque. And my mother said, "That's how old your baby is right now."
Oh, man.
And I was like, "Absolutely not. That doesn't happen." She said, "Take the phone book out, look it up, and see how late you can get an abortion." And I looked it up at 24 weeks.
Wow.
And I was like, that is amazing. But it was just like that little chink in the armor. In my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my son was born, and the professional career, all of my female friends were like, "You got to come back to work within 6 weeks. You don't want to lose your profession." But it was important to me to give my son the same kind of childhood I had, which was magical, with a mom that was there all the time. And so I happened to be in my mom's group at church when the local Right to Life lady came and spoke. And what she said was, Social Security is going to fall. And it's because it was developed with the assumption that there'd be 3.2, 4.2 babies born every year, and that we had aborted all these taxpayers.
Wow.
Clap of lightning. Oh my gosh. And God used that as the way to break my heart. And all of a sudden I was thinking about everything I'd ever done, every woman I'd ever said, "Just go ahead and take care of that. You can have a baby later. Go to Planned Parenthood." And I was stunned. And for 6 months, I couldn't tell anybody what I was dealing with. Here's this baby of mine that I love more than anything, and the realization that he was the same baby right after he was conceived, and that his life was valuable that whole time. And I remember my husband would say, "What is going on with you?" And I couldn't even tell him. And then about 6 months later, I couldn't stop talking about it. And that was 25, 26 years ago.
Wow.
So I started off as a newsletter editor, and never in a million years did I think I would be doing any of this. But God's got a super great sense of humor.
He does. So what were you doing before?
Okay, so I worked at the University of Nevada, and I was a student government advisor. I was in student leadership, student services, all that kind of stuff. And I had a professional path. I don't regret it, but I don't regret ever leaving, because it was great to raise my kids and all that kind of stuff. But God has a great sense of humor, because all of those kids that were student leaders at that time they're all now, they're legislators, they're lobbyists in Nevada. I work with them all the time.
This is destroying society,
Yeah.
the foundation of society. Well, and I love that. You recommended to me a book, The Return of the Gods by Jonathan Cahn, Messianic Jew, for those who don't know what that phrase means. And man, that book blew my brain. I'm like you. I was always that guy that was like, I'm going to protect people. I'm the oldest of a ton of grandkids. My mom's one of 12. And so I've always felt that duty to protect. But all of a sudden you realize that this battle really isn't about us as humans. There's all this other stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it chills me to the core that this is the same battle that has been fought for thousands of years. What did you like about that book?
I had the same response when I read it, because it is this attack on the unborn baby, women, men, our children, even the transgender stuff that's going on. We all kind of think that this is new and that our society is so much worse. But if you look back, you look in history, it's always the same. There's always child sacrifice. Well, society tells me as a woman that if I want to get ahead, I've got to sacrifice my child for a good harvest. That was just like the first step. You know, nothing's new under the sun.
No. We cycle. We cycle through.
Exactly.
And at some point we come to a place where we recognize that something is evil or wrong. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and dominions and powers of darkness. And I take a lot of comfort in that, because I don't ever want to view someone that I'm having a debate with or disagreeing with as the enemy. And I believe in God and in the devil, and I believe in demonic forces that are trying to screw people's lives up and make them unhappy. That just like God wants us to be happy, the devil wants us to be unhappy, and there's this cosmic battle going on around us, and we can't see it. There's about 96% of the universe, 94% of the universe we can't see. Dark matter, dark energy, all that stuff. So when I look at these things and these battles, you come across as such a kind person and you're an advocate. How do you make sure that you approach that in that way, with that energy, where someone who's had, or someone who knows someone who's had an abortion, or someone who's dealt with this, they are not the enemy, but this idol that people are sacrificing childbirth for success and popularity or profit, that's really the problem? How do you make sure you stay in a place of compassion with people?
Well, I mean, that particular question, because I came from we'll just say pro-choice, I'll use their words, pro-choice side. When I had my come to Jesus moment, I guess, it was never about women being evil or anything like that, because I look at every person I ever knew that made that choice, there were other things going on.
Sure.
Most of them didn't feel like they had a choice. The babies break my heart. But I know that those babies go straight to heaven. And so they're in a better place. I want to stop that baby slaughter. But the women and men that walk among us every day with that on their heart, that they did it and they don't feel like they can talk about it, those people break my heart. And those people get me up in the morning to try and help them. So the next person, the next woman doesn't make that decision. They struggle with it oftentimes.
The shame and the guilt is overwhelming. What do you tell people that have had that experience? And the reason I ask is because I served for 2 years as an LDS missionary in Romania, and the communist dictator outlawed cesarean sections and then abortions, which was bizarre. And so the reason there was this huge influx of foster and parentless children in Romania was because of these laws that he had enacted while he was in control and power. And all these deformed babies that parents wouldn't want, because they couldn't have a cesarean section. So a lot of children were born with terrible deformities or breech or different things like that. And a lot of women died. So people would go and get secret abortions all the time in Romania. And it was the number one question that people struggled with when they wanted to come back to Jesus was, well, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I've committed this sin. What do you tell people who struggle with that?
Right. Well, it's a lot easier to talk to a believer. I know that there is no sin so great that isn't washed clean by Jesus' sacrifice. But there's a lot of men and women who sit in church and they know that here.
Yeah, but they don't.
But they don't know it here.
Yeah.
And so there are some incredible healing programs. There are some incredible counselors who can walk with women and men through that, they can come to grips with, yeah, I did this. I regret it. I wish I hadn't. Oftentimes they'll name the baby, and then they'll get healing through like a weekend retreat or a weekly Bible study. There is definitely healing there. And there is definitely forgiveness, but we got to learn to forgive ourselves. I mean, I struggle with the fact that there are women that I know that I was involved because they were a student leader. Don't sacrifice your career. I was peddling that lie. And so I hold myself, my sin is greater than the woman who needed a friend who could tell her there's other choices out there.
If you could talk to some of those people that you encouraged to have an abortion back in the day, what would you tell them right now?
First of all, I'm sorry that I was not a better friend. I'm sorry that I didn't just sit and talk to you and hear what the issue was. Because abortion's not ever the issue. There's other things going on. Maybe you don't have a good husband or a good boyfriend that's going to stand with you. Maybe you think you're not good enough to be a mom, whatever. I'm sorry that I wasn't that good friend. And I'd love to sit down and go through it, and have you give me another chance to be a good friend? And what can I do for you?
Yeah. We all need each other. We need to connect with each other to help each other, yeah. So constitutional question that's rising here in Nevada. It's up for a second vote. You have to vote twice
Right.
here in Nevada. Question 6. And my understanding is that it outlaws any type of regulation about abortion, which is, as a lawyer, that's a little terrifying to me for a lot of reasons. What are some of the reasons why you think this is a bad idea?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to realize that in Nevada, abortion's legal up to 24 weeks for any reason or no reason. It just requires a doctor. Now, I say that with incredible sadness because this is not the law that I wish we had in Nevada, but that's the law. And it can't be changed by a legislature, can't be changed by a governor. The only people who can change that law are the voters. And so if I could, I would run a constitutional amendment to provide for the sanctity of life. That's the only way we could do it. Unfortunately, the other side took a look at our laws and they were not extreme enough. And so they've offered a constitutional amendment that would, number one, take away that doctor requirement. And it could be anybody who is a healthcare practitioner, which is a long list. Basically, anybody loosely affiliated with the healthcare community can do an abortion. So that goes away. It has a phrase that says state and local, or the state and its subdivisions cannot regulate abortion. It says all individuals have a fundamental right to abortion. Now, that's scary for two reasons. First of all individuals, regardless of age. So that means your daughter, who's 12, 13, 17, could get an abortion without you as the dad, your wife as the mom, knowing.
You could have a scenario where one of my kids gets kidnapped or raped or some terrible thing happens, and then they get forced to have an abortion, and I have no say as a parent. That's terrifying to me as a dad.
Absolutely, or a sex trafficker. Yep. You don't even know your daughter is being trafficked, and that trafficker takes her to get an abortion to eliminate any evidence. The one thing that might have keyed you into the problem.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And then at the end, currently it's a pretty bright line, 24 weeks.
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And those babies are viable at that moment. The viability standard, they took out 24 weeks and they leave it up to the abortionist, the healthcare practitioner. If that healthcare practitioner thinks the baby is not able to live outside the womb without extraordinary medical measures, then they can do an abortion. So it's basically up to 9 months. So to summarize, it's abortion performed by anyone, anywhere, on anybody, up to 9 months.
Which is crazy.
And no parental notification.
No parental notification, no physician required.
Right.
Just
Right.
anybody who claims they have a medical relationship.
Well, and here's a question for you as an attorney. What is a man's right to an abortion after this passes?
Well, I have friends, I know guys who've been in a relationship they're committed to. The woman gets pregnant, woman goes and has an abortion without the man. This constitutional amendment would say, doesn't matter. It's the woman's right. There cannot be any law about abortion, which is insane to me. There should be laws. So the answer is that there's no man's right.
Okay, but what about this? It does say all individuals' rights.
Mhm.
So what about his positive right to an abortion?
Oh, that he could go affirmatively require her to get an abortion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they could make that argument as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and see, what I think might happen would be that some guy says, I want an abortion. The girlfriend says, I want to keep the baby.
He says, I have a right to make you get an abortion.
So they go to a judge, and the judge is most likely going to say, well, you can't force her.
Right. But the more we go into this idea that it's just tissue instead of a human,
right.
It's whose baby is that? That's what's, I just think it's
ick.
It's ick, yeah. And it's intellectual dishonesty.
Right.
Is really what it is. It's pretending.
Right.
And I agree with you. I have a lot of compassion for people who have dealt with this. I know many women that have had abortions that have really struggled with the weight of it and the other things going on.
Yeah.
Society is defined by how we treat the defenseless. And if you don't want to believe that a child is a being because they don't breathe or because they haven't taken that first breath yet, then you're going to ignore that they move and they react and they make noise and other things in the womb. It just takes us closer and closer to the idea that it doesn't matter if you're in the womb or not. If I don't like you or if I have a reason to not want to be around you, I can remove you. I had an attorney in DC once, very sharp attorney. She once said, "Oh, I think you should be able to abort kids even until they're 18."
I hope she was joking.
She was. But there's always a little truth in the humor, and that's what's so terrifying about it, is that if at some point it turns back on you.
Oh, absolutely,
it does. At some point, that murder, that taking, that destruction comes back and points the finger at you and says you're next. Whether it's because you're now older or whether it's because you have a baby that's about to be born and the mom doesn't want you to.
Absolutely, and as we commodify life,
that's what it is.
I see it on the beginning and I see it on the end because we deal with end of life issues too. And I spend a lot of time in assisted living communities, memory care. And when you don't have a family to advocate for you and say that, you're valuable and all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people who don't.
Yeah, and the systems will chew you up.
Yes, they will. And you will be commodified. And if your treatment is too expensive or if you're not seen as valuable,
you become a number.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's evil. And we talk a lot about that. This idea that when you treat people like people, you honor that humanity, that creates light. But when you treat people like objects or dollar signs or numbers, that creates darkness. And I wish I could reach through the screen at anybody we're talking to right now and say, you need to understand that if this is a decision you're going to make and you're not going to acknowledge the life of that individual, at some point you will have to.
Absolutely.
Either now or in the hereafter, you're going to interact with that person because it's not like a body just shows up. There's intelligence in every single body.
Right.
And that intelligence doesn't go away. That at some point you're going to have a conversation with that person. That shame and guilt is unbelievable. I wouldn't want to face that.
I had a great conversation with a Chinese woman who, not Christian, but she was talking about how our whole family's just destroyed. That baby had a soul and a spirit.
And a plan and a purpose.
And a plan, and that doesn't just disappear. No. I mean, where does that go? And she's like, these spirits are out here and they're angry. I do know this, that almost every friend I have has had an abortion. That baby's birthday, whatever it was supposed to be, that's a day in their life, and that's a day they have to deal with every year.
Yeah. I know there's fear. Like there's been a lot of rage against people who try and speak up for children, and I have a disagreement that's understandable. But when things become personal, that's when rage enters. That's when anger, hatred start to percolate the conversation. And there are situations where I have seen people become so enraged over this topic that not only are they trying to justify what they did, they're also saying, anybody who disagrees with me, I'm going to kill you too. That's the thing that I think is the most dangerous, is that we're not each other's enemies, even if we disagree.
Right.
And but there is a lot of shame and anger and pain and fear over this topic because we've been lying to ourselves as a society.
Right.
Because I remember growing up and hearing the pro-life, pro-choice debate. I had never thought that there was actually somebody who was pro-abortion.
Mm.
And then President Obama, when I'm sitting in the Office of Science and Technology Policy as a young law clerk in law school, one of the first executive orders he signed was to allow US dollars to be spent on international abortions. And it hit me and I realized he's pro-abortion. If he's going to take US dollars to pay for international abortions, that is, he wants to see abortion. He wants to see
Right.
babies not born.
Mhm.
And that shocked me. I don't know what kind of human wants to stop babies from being born.
I see it all the time when I talk about question 6 because most people react with, that's not what they want. They don't want, they're just trying to protect women. And no, there is an industry behind this.
Let's talk about that next. Yeah, let's go there. So what is the real why? What do you think is fueling all
It's
this?
money.
In what way?
So there's a lot of money in abortion. First of all, Planned Parenthood, largest abortion provider in the country. And every single abortion is going to be $800 to goes up how far along the woman is. So there's that money. And then they use that as a marketing thing. We got to help women. So you got to give us lots of money so we can help poor women kill their babies. And so there's money coming in like crazy, and that money comes in one door and goes out to politicians to keep laws that don't regulate abortion.
Well, and there's also a whole industry of tissue and organ harvesting and stem cell harvesting that's pretty demonic.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's crazy. Like at some point you face your own mortality. I get this. As a human, you get older, but you look at your life and you go, every day's a gift.
Right.
And you have aches and pains and you get older, and this idea you can consume to make yourself feel better. That's really what's going on. Sell the baby parts, and then that can become medicine for people
Right.
who have pains or disease.
And it's big money.
Anybody who becomes wealthy, all of a sudden they care a lot about their health. But when you have money, all of a sudden you go, I have money, I'm running out of time, and I'm in pain.
Right.
I'll trade my money for medicine. And there's a lot of people who want to sell baby parts.
Absolutely.
And it's just so disgusting.
Well, and every time I hear it, I want to say, no, that couldn't happen.
But it does.
But it does. There are congressional records that show Planned Parenthood admitted they sold kidneys and brains. And
it's easier to do internationally, which is now why I look at President Obama's initiative and I go, this was just money. It was about harvesting baby parts from international clinics and locations because it's easier. There's not the FDA, there's not the U.S. regulators looking over the shoulder. They just go do stuff. It's
so sad.
It's disgusting. So there's that. And then Planned Parenthood really acts like a for-profit organization.
Absolutely.
I have my experience with that, but what do you know about that?
Well, look, question 6. They dumped $12 million into the first round of question 6. That's a lot of money. Now, why are they doing that? They're doing that to protect the business. They're doing that to get their candidates elected, because it dump that into our TV waves and our radio waves, and women will believe that they're going to lose something really important if question 6 doesn't pass.
Even though you can still have an abortion up to 6 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No woman can be denied.
Yeah.
No woman. And even a young girl, as long as she lets her parents know.
And just, to me, that seems reasonable. Kids should have parental input.
Parental notification. I know. Exactly. I mean, you think my kids couldn't put sunscreen on at school without a note. The really scary thing about the combination of how they wrote this, no doctors required. School nurses will now be able to do.
Perform abortion.
Yeah. And
that just makes me want to sue the school district more. So
please do.
We probably sued them 300 times last year for kids with special needs, and we don't charge the parents a penny. It's the system consuming people.
It is.
And that's just awful. It's vile.
They're so far off mission.
Yeah. Mission drift is huge. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know anything about abortion pills?
Yeah, you can take the morning after pill. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because the morning after pill is emergency contraception. It's not the abortion pill.
Okay.
So it's really important to understand the difference.
Okay.
The abortion pill is you take one pill and it starves the baby in utero. It's sold by Planned Parenthood as just as safe and effective as Tylenol. And it's just going to be like heavy bleeding, bad cramps, kills the baby, and then it puts that woman into labor, woman or young girl. And so women across the nation are getting these pills, a lot of time not under doctor supervision, and they're taking the pill, they're going home, and they're delivering a dead baby at home.
Oh, wow.
Now, we're hearing women all the time, it was in my bathroom, and I can't even go in my bathroom anymore. And it's tremendous bleeding. It's
The side effects, the trauma.
and when these pills, which are terrible, were first approved, a woman was supposed to have an ultrasound ahead of time to make sure she didn't have an ectopic pregnancy. Super dangerous. Biden eliminated that, the ultrasound at the beginning. Also, you're really not supposed to take these pills after about 10 weeks of gestation
Because the
because
baby's
the baby's so
larger.
big.
Yeah.
They allow them through the mail now. And then you were also supposed to have an ultrasound afterwards to make sure that the entire baby and all of the placenta and everything was delivered, because a woman can get sepsis.
Yeah.
It can be deadly.
Somebody should be able to sue those pill companies for the liability.
100%.
Yeah.
And when you flip that over to kids, your daughter could go and a school nurse could give her those pills and then send her home. Mom and dad don't know what's going on. Their daughter goes into a room and says, I've got bad cramps. I'm just going to sleep. I've got the flu. Mom and dad don't know that they need to be watching for temperature. They need to be making sure that everything's going okay. This question 6 could turn every middle school and high school in the state of Nevada into an abortion provider.
And then kids could come home and die. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I'm grateful that you're speaking up about it. It's a heavy topic. People need to know about it. This is a big battle. We go through cycles. There was this plant that you could take to basically not get pregnant. And it became so popular, so much so that they were using it even into the 1700s and 1800s in England. The men were like, I don't want to have sex with you unless you look good. If you get pregnant, you don't look good. So here's this plant.
Wow.
That plant became so sought after, it became extinct. And now you have these pharmaceutical solutions that do similar things, but also put people at risk. To me, what's crazy about it, it misses all of the connection, all of the compassion, all of the true love. You can't have joy by yourself.
No.
You can't have real satisfaction by yourself. You know the song Mick Jagger, I Can't Get No Satisfaction?
Yeah.
He slept with 4,000 women.
Yeah.
And never really was satisfied, because we as humans, we need to have true connection. We need to have true bonds and relationship and purpose and joy. And I'm sure you felt that with your own kids. You'll never laugh more
Right.
than when you have a child. They bring so much joy and so much humor and so much beauty into your life. I feel like so many people just don't understand that sacrifice is not only significant, it's like selling your whole life for a little mess of porridge, like it talks about in the Bible.
Absolutely. And I look at so many 20 and 30-year-old young professionals, and they're making the choice not to have kids.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything. Oh, man, you're right. I mean, my kids, my husband, there's nobody else I'd rather spend time with.
Yeah.
And it was that way when they were babies. They're the people I want around me when I'm on my deathbed.
Mm.
Our families are the most important thing.
Mm.
Smallest economic unit there is,
Yeah.
and the smallest civilization unit that there is.
It's a little kingdom. I really believe that we created our family bonds that we chose. I'm a big believer that God lets us choose. He gives us agency, even the agency to make a terrible decision or make a mistake. And we all make mistakes. We all do stupid stuff.
Right.
But I believe that we chose our family members, our relationships. So much so, and I hope to have her on as a guest here in the future, but she tells the story about how her name's Elizabeth, and she was left at the Reno airport as a 2-day-old. And she told me her personal experience where she became 18, age of majority, and wanted to find her birth mom. She was adopted by a wonderful family in Reno. She became a beauty queen, very articulate, very intelligent, incredible woman, right? And lived a great life. She's Christian, and she ended up tracking down her mom. And she asked her mom, "Hey, what's the story? What happened? Why'd you give me up?" And her mom said, "I was raped, and I couldn't carry that. I couldn't carry that. I left you at the airport." So Elizabeth ended up going and talking to a spiritual advisor, and the spiritual advisor is counseling her and says, "Do you want to see it?" She's like, "I don't want to see my mom getting raped." She's like, "No, no, no. Do you want to see your conversation with God before you came down to earth?" And she was like, "Yeah." And she has this spiritual experience where she's in heaven, she's waiting, gathered to go to earth. God says, "Who's ready to go?" And she raises her hand and goes up to front, and he's like, "Oh, dear little one, are you sure you want to do this? Because this is going to be very hard for you. But if you are willing to go, you will heal the wounds of both of your mothers."
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that beautiful?
That is.
And so you just look at stories like that, and I believe there's a lot of wound, and there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of fear, but there's so much grace,
Yes.
and there's so much beauty that
Yeah.
overwhelms and erases and heals. And so I hope that people who are watching this can understand that there is that room for forgiveness and healing, and
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. What a beautiful story.
right?
I'm a little gobsmacked right now, but you know, my dad was adopted, and it was, you know, one of those situations where bad, you know, like it was a bad situation, 5 kids and marriage blew apart and all that kind of stuff. And he ended up with another part of the family, and he just had this magical life
Mm.
throughout his life. I mean, the happiest pessimist you've ever met. I mean, he just was always expecting another shoe to drop. But boy, the guy was he was a joy.
Mm.
And I look at, you know, and then my husband, he was conceived out of wedlock. They got married, kind of a shotgun thing.
Mm. I like shotguns.
Yeah, I do too. I like my husband.
Yeah.
You know, and not, it was not the easy way for anybody involved. But again, just such a great guy. And the most you know, I wouldn't be here. My husband wouldn't be here. Adoption's such a beautiful thing.
Mm.
And, you know, and I tell my kids all the time, you know, I've never heard of anybody saying, "I wish I'd had less kids."
Yeah. Yeah.
know-
Everyone we have 5, everyone we've had, we're like, "Can you imagine life without that child?"
Oh, I know.
No.
Exactly.
Everyone adds to the joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny that the you know, the times when the kids were little and it seemed like it was so overwhelming, boy, I'd give anything to go back to those days.
Yeah. Me too. I had hair then.
It was the kids did it to you.
Yeah, probably that didn't work. It's working too much.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of famous examples of people who weren't aborted
Yeah.
that have lived incredible lives.
Right.
You know, some amazing football players, I'm sure, you know.
Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, Colin, yeah, incredible. Yeah, that's very true. And you know, I wish we could find someone like that to just come and talk about this here in Vegas, because I don't think Vegas is a very small community, and Nevada is a very small state in a beautiful way. Like, it's, you know, 2 big towns
Mm-hmm.
between Reno and Vegas. And I just wish people could understand how important this topic is. Like, there's a lot of liberty, there's a lot of choice, a lot of things are legal, but man, we got to protect little kids.
Yeah. You know, they are, you're exactly right. We are judged how we take care of the most vulnerable among us. And they're the most vulnerable, but they're also the most potential.
Yeah,
And-
equipped for change. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And,
Yeah, I believe every child has the capacity to change the world. Like, genuinely,
Absolutely.
right?
yeah.
I think they come equipped, back to this before Earth thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like God sending them down to help make the world a better place, and we're killing them all. You know, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. It's every one of them's individual snowflake, unrepeatable.
Mm-hmm.
And we, we're throwing away puzzle pieces.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I want to ask you 3 last questions.
Okay.
Okay. And then we'll kind of wrap up here. But I ask everybody, what's your why? And what do you believe? And what do you do that creates light? Or what do you find in your life that creates light? And then the last thing I often ask is, do you have any mantras, like things that you were like, yeah, these are my power statements.
Okay.
One of my power statements, for example, is receive then share.
Oh, I like it.
I'm like, let's get stuff and then go share it with people, right?
I like it. Yeah.
So what's your why? What do you believe? And light, and then maybe some mantras. What do you got?
Okay. So my why, we don't have much time. We got to get it done.
Mm.
And I think I really do believe we all have a purpose, and I just want to live that purpose.
Mm. Mm.
And leave the planet a little bit better off than I got it.
So what do you believe in general about everything?
I believe most people are good. I believe this isn't heaven, and that our work here gets us to heaven. I have a new mantra that I just started. Fill me, use me. I need to be more humble, and I need to just say yes and do what I'm supposed to.
Well, you're doing it. You're clearly speaking for those who can't speak themselves. All right. Well, it's been such a delight. It's such a good conversation. This is hard stuff, but I think we can unite around some common principles. And I think, to me, heaven is unity.
Absolutely.
And we don't have to agree on everything, but we can be united about this idea that people matter, that individuals are important and creative and beautiful and powerful, and we should protect each other.
Yeah. Especially the littlest ones of us. Those are 2 important things. And so I encourage people to vote no on 6 for women's health and safety, for the safety of young girls, regardless of whether you're pro-life or pro-choice.
We can all agree we should be pro-girl and pro-woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the best way for us to protect against people just becoming products? Isaiah talks about the ships of Tarshish getting stuck and people lamenting, terrified that the ships that are bringing wealth and goods and the things we need have stopped. And then you fast forward to Revelations, where John's like, he couples this idea with when Christ comes again, people will be lamenting that Babylon has fallen. And he says, Babylon was the place where you could get silks and fur and gold and frankincense and all these things and souls. And that's what Babylon is. It's the buying and selling of souls. And so we just got to be mindful.
Yeah.
I feel like all of us are looking for a reason to fight against something evil. And nothing is more evil to me than abusing a child.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm glad that you're fighting that fight. Thanks for being you.
It's been a pleasure.
Wow,
And I'm so glad to have met you.
Oh, thank you. It's so good to be able to meet you and be able to rub shoulders with you and get to know you better. And let's go keep changing the world.
Amen, brother.
Thank you for taking time today to watch this episode. I love that you enjoy this content. Please like, subscribe, and share so we can spread this across the world and create more light together.